North Korea reported on U.S. President Donald Trump's election win and inauguration for the first time on Wednesday morning, and just a day after Trump officially made it back to the White House. Let us discuss more with Professor Robert Kelly this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, North Korea's report on Trump's election win, what should we read into that?
I think the North Koreans will probably respond to Trump the way they did 4 years ago, which is that they'll listen to him, they'll engage him if he comes forward, if he actually brings some kind of real concrete concessions. For example, Trump and the Secretary of State nominee, Pete Hegseth, have both referred to North Korea as a nuclear power. That's kind of status recognition that North Korea wants. So as long as the Trump administration continues to signal in that way to North Korea, right, if they say, maybe we'll relieve some sanctions or something like that, I think the North Koreans will come and talk. But I think the idea that the two of them have some kind of bromance or something like that, or that, Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un are friends or something. Trump really loves to emphasize that. I would be pretty surprised if the North Koreans talk like that again. They did all that with Trump 4 or 5 years ago and nothing really came of it.
Well, can we say the regime is welcoming back Trump? I mean, would you say the North is leaving a door open for Trump and possible talks with Trump?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, certainly Trump is more willing to engage North Korea on a transactional basis, right? Transactionalism is the term we often use to describe Trump's approach to foreign policy, right? Trump is much more willing to engage North Korea one-to-one without worrying about issues of ideology or alliance commitments to South Korea, broader commitments to liberalism, North Korea's human rights record. A lot of those things have made it difficult for U.S. presidents in the past to approach North Korea. Trump is the only one who ever talked to a North Korean leader directly, in part because we wanted to only do that in coordination with South Korea. We wanted to make sure the North Koreans moved a little bit on issues like human rights because, you don't want the American president meeting some really bloodthirsty dictator. And Trump just dismissed all of that and just went and, he just went in there, right? I mean, he didn't really prepare. He just kind of got off the plane and he even walked over the DMZ for a moment. So I think that, if you're the North Koreans, I mean, this is the kind of American leader that you want. He's not going to talk about human rights. He's not going to talk about the alliance. He's probably not going to bring up nuclear weapons too much. I mean, he's looking for a deal. That's how Trump thinks.
Well, we have to talk about Trump calling North Korea a nuclear power on the inauguration day. Now, where is this recognition coming from? I mean, does it mean there'll be no denuclearization talks?
So first of all, I think that it doesn't make, this has gotten a lot of sort of hype in the U.S. and South Korean media because of the concern that, we officially recognize North Korea as a nuclear weapon state. I actually don't think that Donald Trump is really aware that it's all that important or that it's important to not say that, or that this is some kind of official designation that would be made. And I think Trump just kind of said it. In the same way that I think Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of State designate, Secretary of Defense designate, I think he just said it in part because, he used to be a Fox News television host. I mean, he's really not well versed in these kinds of things. I think more important, certainly that's what North Korea wants to hear. But I think more important will be the actual formal white papers that begin to come from the Trump administration on defense issues. The most important is the national security strategy. The Trump people produced one back in 2017. They'll probably produce one in the next year or so, and there is where you will see the official position of the Trump administration on North Korea. And there Trump will, if Trump wants to recognize North Korea as a nuclear weapon state, he will run into a lot of resistance probably from South Korea, certainly from Congress, from the U.S. foreign policy community, from the Defense Department. I mean, there are a lot of people out there who don't want North Korea officially recognized as a nuclear weapon state. We worry about what that means for North Korea's proliferation or use of these things. We worry about what that signals to Iran and other states that might like to build nuclear weapons. So I think that's just Trump shooting off the cuff. That's just Trump talking.
So maybe we are overanalyzing Trump's,
A little bit.
Yeah. Well, then the speculations are high that there'll be smaller deals between Trump and Kim Jong-un. What's your take on it? And do you think Kim will agree to any of those smaller deals that Trump will offer?
Yeah, I have always thought in my own writing, my own sort of work on North Korea negotiation, I've always argued that smaller deals are the way forward because the gaps between the U.S. and North Korea, between South Korea and North Korea are enormous, right? There's a very wide ideological distance. The strategic issues are really deep and long set, reaching all the way back to the 1950s, right? It's very, very difficult to do a kind of like big breakthrough, one and done kind of mega deal with North Korea. There are huge issues of trust and sequencing, which make all of that extraordinarily difficult, which is probably why Donald Trump didn't get that super deal back in 2018. And I think the better approach is to sort of do small step-by-step little bits where you sort of get a little bit from the North Koreans and we give up a little bit in exchange. You could repeal one sanction in exchange for the North Koreans allowing cameras into one of their nuclear plants or something. I mean, there's all kinds of modalities that we can discuss, but I certainly agree that small deals that build incrementally towards a larger breakthrough are much more likely to work than one kind of summit that clears the air and just revolutionizes the relationship. That's extraordinarily difficult to do. It's very rare in diplomacy. And to be also, too, quite honestly, I'm not sure Donald Trump knows enough about the issues that are actually relevant here to sort of broker a big breakthrough deal, right? Trump would have to learn a lot about ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons and Korean history, and and he didn't do that the first time, right? He just flew into Singapore and got off the plane.
Right.
So, I'm not sure that a mega deal is in the cards. It's just too difficult.
Well, I'm sure Trump's learned his lessons. Professor Kelly, before I let you go, how likely is it that do you think that Trump will invite and get Seoul involved in possible future Trump-Kim dialogue? I mean, any reason for Trump to have Seoul play a role in Trump-Kim engagement?
In fact, I think Trump will not do that on purpose. Donald Trump loves being the center of attention. He loves being congratulated by others and being seen as the sort of man of action who did things. And he very clearly and purposely cut South Korea out of the previous negotiation. I mean, it actually got to the point where Moon Jae-in was signaling to the Americans in 2017 that the United States could not attack North Korea without South Korea's permission, which, by the way, I think is a good thing, right? We shouldn't start a war over the heads of the South Korean public. Not. And yeah, I agree. And Donald Trump just doesn't think that way. He just doesn't. Donald Trump likes to bully small states, right? He's talking about absorbing Greenland and taking back the Panama Canal, right? I mean, he's just not going to respond to a mid-sized ally like South Korea saying, you have to pull us into these conversations. I hope he does, but that is not Trump's record in dealing with weaker states. So I would be surprised if he did.
Well, in the near future, we'll have to get back to you for roles that Seoul has to play so that we don't get left out or passed. Thank you so much for sharing your insight with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.